Bill Clinton talked about the politics of personal destruction, and we've definitely seen that in the exit of Dominic Raab. Was he pushed? Was he persuaded to resign? Almost certainly he was persuaded to resign. He must have been reminded a few times by others of his statement on Laura Newsberg's show that should any element of the charges against him be found to be true, substantiated, then he would offer his resignation. They were, he did. What this does in practice is it gives the civil service extraordinary power. And that, coupled with the mythology that the civil service is non-political, could be extremely damaging for any future governments, could be damaging for this current government. The civil service is committed to its own agenda, which may well be keeping the status quo and not moving forward, and trying as hard as possible to avoid too much work. Change is always about extra work, and it's hard enough putting into practice what you know you've got to do every day without having to completely rebuild the machinery and the accommodation. But depending on how extreme a change is wanted, the civil service, I'm sure, could be extremely reluctant to engage with that, to implement that. We know that the Foreign Secretary, we know that the Foreign Service, the civil service in the in the Foreign Office, is famous for having been firmly of a Remain disposition and thought that the electorate had got the decision wrong in the referendum. I must say I would feel quite at home with that point of view, but it wasn't the point of view that should have been engaged by the Foreign Office in the follow-up to the referendum. In fact, in the follow-up to the referendum, what we needed was people to find a way to implement the will expressed. You know, whether we agree with that or not, find a way to implement that as quickly as possible. So I think Theresa May's approach was utterly wrong. I think Boris Johnson's approach was probably right, but Boris Johnson didn't have control of the detail, and by that point I think possibly it was too late to implement the referendum result without a fallout. So in the end it goes down to Mrs. May's dithering. How are we going to repair the damage? How are we going to ensure that a civil service is loyal to its boss? Well, I think one way is to look again at the ministerial code, and to look again at the way ministers demand and require the civil service to behave properly, and what exactly is the remit? What exactly is the remit? I think it's not clear, and I think that clarity could be established. I think the present government needs to leave behind some sort of record of achievement. That would be one. The other, I think, as I've been saying repeatedly, would be to call together an international conference to debate the future of migration.